Hi, my name is Jeffrey. I am an alcoholic. I haven't found it necessary to take a drink since October 1st of 2005, and for that I'm truly grateful. My home group is the 12 and 12 group in Tacoma. I have a sponsor who has a sponsor, and I sponsor people. So the program of Alcoholics Anonymous is ingrained in me. And before I begin, I'd first like to say, Steve, when you asked me, Jeffrey wanted to say no. All up in my head, I was no, no, no. But the spirit of sharing our experience, strength, and hope took over, and I said yes. And and that also helped allowed me to drag Aaron along as well, get him his first experience. Before I begin, because I'm just going to talk briefly about what it used to be like, what happened, and what is, and I'm going to talk mostly about what it's like now. But I'd like to set the stage for what it used to be like and what happened. And it's in the big book, and it's on page 552, and it's the story of freedom and sobriety. The woman shared, the only real freedom a human being could ever know is doing what you ought to do because you want to do it. This great experience that released me from the bondage of hatred and replaced it with love is just another affirmation of the truth I know. I get everything I need in Alcoholics Anonymous, and everything I need, I get. And when I get what I need, I invariably find it was just what I wanted all the time. And so I start off that because that's how it was growing up. I always yearned for something. I always wanted to be a part of something, but at an early age, I found out that I was an introvert. I always kept to myself. Now, that come from, I was born and raised in Detroit, Michigan. Uh, Two boys and three girls. My father was in the military, but he and my mother, they didn't get together, so they separated. And he continued on with his career, and my mother was left to raise five kids on her own. So she moved us from Pontiac, Michigan, where all our family, cousins and aunties and grandparents were, and moved us to Detroit at a very early age. So right off the gate, I saw things and I experienced things that I don't think a young kid should experience. So with that culture shock, I believe that was the time that I had become an introvert. I had to keep everything to I thought that I had to keep everything to myself, to protect myself, because there was really no one there to protect me. I remember early on, my friend, this was a school guy I went to elementary school with. We're walking down the alley, and he kicks this bag, and it makes this doop 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 sound. Come to find out, there was a tall can of Budweiser and a pack of Cools. That was my first drink. Was a Budweiser, and that's when I smoked. Well, I was practicing smoking my first cigarette, and the feeling that I got from that first beer, it wasn't that, ooh, wow, take me away. It was, that's kind of nasty. Where can we get some more? How can we get some more of that? But, and I vividly remember we weren't able to get any more beer, but we were able to get some wine. And it was the Boone Farms apple wine, Strawberry Hill. So I started drinking wine and smoking cigarettes. That was my first experience with freedom. Getting out of myself, being who I wanted to be, and just to fast forward, that continued on into those early years. But the early years of elementary school. But when I was in elementary school, I noticed that there was a chip on my shoulder, and I was real angry at something, and I used to fight, and I got kicked out of school so much that I got good at writing the note. My mother, my here, Could you please let him back in school? I'm busy. I'm at this appointment. I was good at writing those notes to get myself back into school, only to get kicked out again. And so those behaviors, being kicked out of school, it gave me that opportunity to be in the community. So now I'm in the community and I'm finding other people to drink with. I'm finding other people to use other substances with at an early age. And I'm still in elementary school. So that was my introduction into the quote unquote nefarious world. And so that progressed all the way. Well, I'd say I was about 10 or 11 years old when we first found that beer and that pack of cigarettes. So I term it as I went to a party when I was 10 or 11 years old, and I didn't come home until I was 44. You know, my addiction took me through a lot of different places. That's why I said I'll just briefly share on what it used to be like. What happened was this last time that I went to prison here in the state of Washington, I went to prison. Now I had went to AA before, so I had a little bit of AA within me. I went to Cedar Hills Treatment Center, and I graduated back in 2000, and I came here to Seattle and went to the 1504 Club and the Cherry Hall Club, and I got sober, and I had a lot of people. I had met a lot of people, and we were recovery buddies. And my very first sponsor, Ruffin, is where I met him at. And so I had a little bit of recovery in me, but I also had a couple more relapses in me. You know, during that journey, through my a couple of relapses, I found myself extremely homeless, not just couch surfing and not just sleeping in the car, but literally with the cardboard box and the tent and the blue tarp. I found myself that way, and I spent 3 years. So therefore, I turned back inside. I became that introvert once more, you know, and so I was totally in bondage. You know, even though I wasn't drinking as much, but I was using other dry goods, you know, and they kept me making um, bad decisions. They kept me just not wanting to live. All I was doing was existing, you know, and I felt really bad about what I had become. So when I finally came into Alcoholics Anonymous this last time, which was October the 1st of 2005, um, I vowed that I'm going to pay attention to what these people have, because every time I was going out and coming back in and going out and coming back in, I would see the same people still there. It's like, man, aren't you done? It's been 2 or 3 years. Aren't you done with this stuff now? You know, you should have graduated, should have moved on. But they say, no, this is an education without a graduation. That was one of the first lessons that I learned in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, that this is an education without a graduation. So, you know, so I asked the gentleman to take me through the steps. He took me through the steps. And as we're going through, because I was kind of fearful of telling him everything, because remember, at an early age, I experienced a lot of things that a kid should never experience. Well, one of the most tragic things that I had experienced was a molestation. And I swore, I'm taking this to the grave with me. Nobody is going to ever hear about this, because I didn't want people to judge me. I didn't want people to think bad about me. Mainly, I didn't want people to talk about me, because that would just make me feel really bad, because I already felt bad about myself, you know, which also lends into that self bondage that I had created for myself. Well, we went through the steps. Through my we were doing my fifth step, and we got to the end, and it was at that part where he says, have you left anything out? We sat silently for a minute, and, you know, arrogantly, I was like, no, I told you everything, you know. And he didn't say anything. We just sat there a little bit longer. And I do believe that it was the the spirit of a loving God reaching down, intervening in my heart. Says, no, you got to tell somebody about this. So I told him that when I was 8 or 9 years old, I was molested by my friend's brother. And this was the same guy that I found the beer and the pack of cigarettes with. I was molested about that. And so I'm thinking that the next thing that's going to come out this man's mouth is, man, how could you let somebody blah, 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 and, everything. But that didn't happen. What he did, what happened was he told me about his molestation. And for some reason, that was like that proverbial uh, backpack of bricks that I had been carrying around for all of these years. I was able to take that backpack off and I was able to breathe with a sigh of relief. Because, one of the things that he had shared with me throughout that incident was he says, that wasn't your fault. That wasn't your fault because for all of those years, 30, maybe 40 years, I had been blaming myself. I thought it was my fault. I thought I had done something. But when he told me that it wasn't my fault, that's when I started experiencing freedom from bondage. Once again, that's why I like that passage. You know, I was finally free to learn who Jeffrey was. And, on the way here, Aaron and I were talking in the car about that time frame between 5 to 10 years. How if during these birthdays, there seems to be kind of a lull between 5 and 7 and 10 years. First, I don't know what the reason is, but for some reason, a lot of people don't make it. And I was right in that area when we had done my fourth and fifth step, and I found that I was able to persevere through that. And now I don't feel ashamed. I don't feel guilt. I don't feel shackled down by that part of my life. And so, therefore, if I can get through that, then without finding it necessary to take a drink or take a drug, then I'm pretty sure I can get through anything in life. And so I have. I started persevering through that. And so now I don't just talk about that just, blatantly at any meeting, but when the spirit moves me, I mention it, and it never fails that after I share that, after the meeting, some man comes up to me and shares his experience. And so I look at it as it's coming. It's something that comes from God of my understanding. So persevering through the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, I just never thought that I would have this type of life. I never thought, I've only dreamed. I could honestly say that I've only dreamed of being happy, joyous, and free, but it was never a reality because I didn't possess those qualities to push through things as a young man. I didn't have that male role model in my life at a young age to help me to grow, to go through those growing pains. I had, pimps, players, hustlers, prostitutes, numbers people. I had all of these people these were my heroes. And so I thought I had to become one of those type of people in order to succeed in life. I mean, many a years ago, I found out that that's not true, because today I possess I possess a bachelor's degree, and I'm licensed by the Washington State Department of Health as a substance use disorder counselor. So, I can say that I am somebody, but part of my education, because going through everything that I went through, I never went to junior high or high school. So that in itself, it fed into some of my bondage, my self-imposed bondage, because I never went to junior high or high school. And so if I told people this, they would talk about me. They would call me names. They would say that I'm not smart enough. So I kept that stuff into my to myself. And so throughout my life, I had constructed these walls that were so big. I constructed these walls to keep people out because I didn't want what happened to me when I was 11 or 12 years old to happen to me again. So I constructed these walls to keep people away from me. And I was okay with being in there by myself. I found solace in that up until I wanted to get out. I found that I had constructed these walls so thick and so high that it did its job of keeping people out, but it also kept me in. So I spent maybe 20 or 30 years in my self imposed bondage. And that's where a lot of my substance use and my alcoholism had stemmed from. Because when a problem happened, I would drink it away, or I would smoke it away, or I would snort it away, or I would uh, get in get involved in some nefarious behaviors, which takes me through the county jail, which also takes me to the penitentiary. And so to learn how to live life on life's terms took some work for me to do. I didn't just wake up one morning and say, okay, I'm clean. I know what to do. Here I go. I had to relearn, reteach myself on how to talk to people. When I first came out here to Washington in 1989, every other word was cuss words. That's the only way I knew how to express myself. That was the only way that I knew how to talk to people was through curse words, word through analogies, word through just descriptive ways. And I had to learn how to talk. Because I remember I had one girlfriend. I had one girlfriend, and her family. Her family was from Camas, and when they would come to visit us, I would be a whole different person because before it was MFs and blah 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 and such and such and such. But when her parents came in, I was proper. I was able to speak, and she was the first one to bring that to my attention. She says, "Do you notice that every time my parents come down, you speak in a different tone?" I'm not saying that it's bad, but it's different because when it's just you and I feel disrespected. I feel belittled the way that you talk to me. But when my parents come down, there is a whole new approach that you give. I said, no, I never did. I never really paid attention to it. And that was because I've learned throughout all my years to adapt to my surrounding behaviors. I was truly a chameleon, and I was never Jeffrey. I was always this or I was always that. And so, to make a short story long, when I was working on my bachelor's degree, the second day of class, I was in with the professor. No, this was the second week. I'm sorry, and we had read. She had assigned us this book, The Native Son, and so I read the book, and I had some really, really good points to make. And so, as I'm articulating those points to her, she made the comment. Now, this woman hadn't seen me um, in all of the. She had never seen me before, and she made the point blank declaration. She says, "You know what? You smart, and you don't even know it." And that was the first time anybody had ever said anything like that to me. And so taking that into consideration, coupled with being sober, coupled with wanting to have a life worth living, I never looked back. I continued to educate myself. I continued to want to be in the fray. I continued to work with my sponsor on what it takes to be a man, what it's like navigating healthy relationships, what it's like working through money management. These are a lot of the different things that I have learned for myself in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous because, you know, I no longer wanted to be the Jeffrey that was a POS, a piece of crap. I wanted to be someone who, when I leave this earth, they people will say good things about me, you know, and so I don't think I would have ever. I don't know if I would have or would not have, but I don't want to go back and rewind things. But I don't know if I would have ever been able to achieve that without the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, without the principles of the steps in my life. You know, Alcoholics Anonymous has given me a life worth living, and I don't want to shortchange myself by saying that this stuff never worked because they call it in the book contempt prior to investigation. I'd like to read one more thing because I am sweating like a hog. All right. It is 265. It's out of the Keys of the Kingdom. So on page 275 of Keys of the Kingdom, it says, AA is not a plan for recovery that can be finished and done with. It is a way of life. And the challenges contained in its principles is great enough to keep any human being striving for as long as he lives. Cannot outgrow this plan. As arrested of alcoholics, we must have a program for living that allows for limitless expansion. Keeping one foot in front of the other is essential for maintaining our arrestment. Others may idle in a retrogressive groove without too much danger, but retrogression can spell death for us. However, it isn't as rough as it sounds, as we do become grateful for the necessity that makes us toe the line, and we find that we are compensated for a continuous effort by the countless dividends we receive. A complete change takes place in our approach to life. Where we used to run from responsibility, we find ourselves accepting it with gratitude that we can successfully shoulder it. And excuse me, instead of wanting to escape some perplexing problem, we experience the thrill of challenge and the opportunity it affords for another application of AA's techniques. And we find ourselves tackling it with surprising vigor. The last 15 years have been rich and meaningful. I have had my share of problems, heartaches, and disappointments because that is life. But also, I have known a great deal of joy and peace that is the handmaid of an inner freedom. I have a wealth of friends, and with my AA friends, an unusual quality of fellowship. For to those people, I am truly related, first through mutual pain and despair, and later through mutual objectives and newfound hope. And as the years go by, working together, sharing our experiences with one another, and also sharing in mutual trust, understanding, and love without strings, without obligations, we acquire relationships that are unique and priceless. There is no more loneliness with that awful ache so deep in the heart of every alcoholic that nothing before could ever reach it. That ache is gone and never need to return again. Now there's a sense of belonging, of being wanted and needed and loved. In return for a bottle and a hangover, we have been given the keys of the kingdom. My name is Jeffrey, and I am an alcoholic. Thank you.